Welcome to Straight Outta Health IT. Getting into health tech is rough, but here's an unfiltered dialogue of healthcare leaders and influencers covering a wide variety of issues affecting healthcare and the health tech industry. And now your host, Christopher Cunny.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Straight Outta Health IT. I'm your host, Christopher Cunny, and I'm so excited on this episode to have three of my most favorite people on the planet on the show today. We have been talking about trying to pull this group of people together for several months, and I've been able to wrangle the cats together and now get us here on actually a very late evening to actually record this episode. So I want to thank all of them for taking time out of their busy schedules to do it as well, too. And the topic we're going to cover today is one that I think some feel can be controversial. I'm hoping it will be a constructive discussion this evening. But we are going to talk a little bit about the Supreme Court's recent ruling on affirmative action, and specifically how that ruling is going to impact the healthcare talent pool, and specifically around the healthcare technology talent pool as well, too. So buckle your seats and enjoy this evening's conversation. But before I introduce my guests, I just wanted to share a couple of my personal thoughts. So this is my thoughts, no one else's. And I'll go ahead and put the disclaimer out there right now for my guests. Anything that they share or say is their own personal opinion. It's not reflective of any of the organizations or institutions that they're working with. And don't hold them anything against them going forward. This is just a pure commentary and hopefully a very constructive discussion. Now that I got that out of the way, let's hit the ground running. The Supreme Court recently ruled on affirmative action, and it's been a topic of heated debate in healthcare on the healthcare technology industry since the decision was made. While the ruling is quite honestly not directly related to health technology, its impact on the industry's talent pool will be, I believe, significant. Technology is a field that's already facing a shortage of skilled workers, and a Supreme Court decision is likely to make it more even challenging for companies and healthcare organizations to attract and retain qualified professionals. On today's episode, we're going to examine the potential implications of the Supreme Court ruling on healthcare technology, including how it could impact the diversity of the workforce and how companies can navigate, more importantly, this new landscape to ensure that we continue to attract the best talent for our organizations. Again, I'm so excited and happy to have three amazing human beings on the show today. And without further ado, let me introduce all of them. Two of them actually have already been on my podcast before. So welcome back to those two. And I'm excited to have the third one here as well, too. Again, without further ado, let me introduce you to Dr. Angelita Howard, who is the founding dean for online programs and extended programs at Morehouse School of Medicine. Dr. Sweta Sneha, founder and executive director of healthcare management and informatics at Kennesaw State University. And Geoffrey M. Roche, who's also Director of Workforce Development for North America for Siemens Healthineers, which is an interesting term. You're going to have to explain that to us a little bit as well, Geoffrey. So welcome, Angelita, Sweta, and Geoffrey to another episode of Straight Outta Health IT. I'm so excited to have all of you here this evening.
Thank you. We are excited in the late night hour. It only takes you to get us all together in pajamas, ready to talk about what we're ready to talk about. So let's get it. I'm ready.
Sounds good.
Excited. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Sweta?
No, I'm really excited to be here. I've known Chris for a while now, and Angelita as well. She and I actually shared the Woman of the Year podium once when in 21 when she was the winner. And I am really excited to share this platform with her again and glad that Geoffrey is here to balance both of us out.
Yes.
Sounds good. Absolutely. And definitely last but not least, Geoffrey.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. And I mean, let's be honest, right? Congress isn't working right now. And so at least we are. And as I remind people all the time, political determinants of health matter. And I'm glad at least we're working. Hopefully we'll get a speaker and get the House back to order, but that's a whole different subject.
Knock on wood and say a couple Hail Marys. Before we jump into the conversation, really quick, because I know there's a lot we want to try to cover in this episode, if each of you would just briefly, I know I gave your titles, but that doesn't do justice in terms of what you do on a day-to-day basis. If you would just take a minute to do a quick pitch of your role in your organization and anything else you think would be relevant to share about your personal journey into that space. And I'll start with Geoffrey. We'll start with the guy first.
Thank you, Christopher. So obviously, Geoffrey Roche, have the privilege of serving at Siemens Healthineers as the first inaugural director of workforce development within North America. And so obviously covering United States and Canada. And obviously Christopher gave the disclaimer, but just a reminder, I'm just speaking on behalf of myself on this topic. I'm a first generation American. And so my family came to this country in 1963. My approach to these topics also comes from that lens. And I'm also the first in my family to have obtained a bachelor's degree. And I'm the son of a nurse, but also a son of a community college graduate. My entire upbringing, in many ways, with a single mother, has helped frame who I am today, but also helped me understand this global footprint. And it's wonderful to be here. And let me just say, as some of my dear friends know from my childhood, I'm also somebody who, at a very young age, spent more time, particularly with other cultures than my own. And that was by design in many ways, because my mother believed very strongly in you've got to really have that foundation to really understand how we can be an advocate for others. And so, happy to be here and happy to particularly be here with such esteemed guests and particularly with two doctors. So
thank you. And Sweta?
Hi, my name is a tongue twister, not as easy as Jeff. So it's, just imagine it to be German. So it's Sweta Sneha. And I am representing Kennesaw State University today. And of course, anything that I say is my opinions and my perspectives and does not reflect what KSU's take on it. I will say I'm one of the newest bees to the whole ecosystem and to US in particular, because I came to US right after my high school. And although I've spent almost 3 decades in US, most of which has been spent in technology and healthcare, everything that I do today, so for Kennesaw, as in the role of the founder and executive director for healthcare management and informatics, I lead KSU's strategy in academic industry partnerships in developing a workforce of the future that does not just has the robust skill sets needed to drive that forward, but also represents the diversity of the ecosystem that it's going to serve. So in that capacity, it's important for me. I'm almost intentional and very strategic about ensuring that our workforce and the cohorts that we bring into the pool represent the diversity of the community that we serve. So it's really important for me to build into it because, as we know, tech and healthcare are two of the disciplines that are going to dominate the future in more ways than one. So if we are going to leave one part of the society behind in that, we are not just going to be doing a disservice to them. We are actually going to be doing a disservice to the community that it seeks to serve, because empathy doesn't build out of vacuum. Geoffrey said, if you haven't spent time with the people you serve, you're not going to be able to build a community that has the same level of empathy and that has the same level of understanding. We all know where the social determinants of health is taking us. It's almost critical to build that capacity in the workforce of the future. So happy to play a role in it. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Angelita.
Thank you so much. And I do appreciate this opportunity, Christopher. And I'm so glad to be here with my fellow colleagues, really talking about this at Morehouse School of Medicine. And again, I will also put the disclaimer out that what we're saying and what I'm talking about does not represent the thoughts of Morehouse School of Medicine, but Angelita Howard. I have the pleasure of overseeing our online programs at Morehouse School of Medicine, which we started about 4 years ago. And so one of the focus that I certainly wanted to make sure that we take an approach, let me say this, with biotech, we have a Master's of Science in Biotech, Master's of Science in Health Informatics, a Doctor of Health Administration, Master's of Administration just as involved here. These are some of the online programs that we have. When we think about, let's just say health informatics or biotech, we know that less than 10, 11% of the workforce are African Americans or people of color. And then when you start talking about those who are CEOs or sit on have executive level jobs or boards, that percent goes to about 2 or 3%. And so what are we doing to disrupt that? What are we doing to make sure that there's a workforce that we're building up that is going to help to decrease those gaps and those diversity gaps and those disparity gaps? And so that's the work that we're doing. That's the intentional work. So one of the programs I had the pleasure of building is a summer pipeline. And Christopher, you've been a part of that. You've taught. You are actually the founding chair for the health informatics program there. But it's to give exposure, because if people don't have exposure in elementary, middle school, and high school, they tend not to choose that pathway. So really building out that pipeline to give exposure to predominantly people of color, underserved communities, so that they can go back and serve in these communities. They can go back and really deal with health disparities and health inequities and advance health equity.
Now, again, thank you everyone for your commitment to service within your respective areas, and definitely looking forward to continuing the conversation as well. That being said, that Supreme Court ruling, which addressed the use of race in college admissions, really has ignited a nationwide conversation about the broader implications for the industry, that has heavily relied on highly skilled professionals in this industry, specifically healthcare technology in particular. And it thrives on innovation. It thrives on cutting edge advancements. It thrives on making acquisitions of top talent crucial for the success. And I'm just curious, Sweta and Angelita, can you share with me what your institutions, and I know this is your personal comment, so we'll go ahead and say that one more time for everyone. But from your perspective, what was your institution's reaction and response to the recent Supreme Court ruling? And, I'll start with you, Angelita.
So I think, and you brought this, you really shaped the conversation, but if I can just give a little bit more history to affirmative action, really, when we talk about affirmative action, it was really meant to rectify past and present discrimination, inequalities, and disadvantages faced by minority groups, particular Blacks or African Americans, Hispanic, Native Americans, and I would assume, and women. And I don't know, for those of you who are listening, if you ever read the Flexner Report. If you've read the Flexner Report, you understand that even then, there were many more HBCUs, historically Black colleges and university medical schools, that were shut down because of quote unquote regulations or things to make it a gold standard. Immediately, that took away from more Blacks being able to go to school for education. So now we have 4 historically Black medical colleges, and Morehouse School of Medicine is one of that. So of course, the impact was huge for us. We felt it in such a way that we really had to have a sit down and community talk about it. Of course, there were emails that have gone out. People didn't understand how this was going to impact, but it really, for two sides, we had to have a conversation. What does this mean? What does it mean for the United States? What does it mean for us to have this ruling? But then how do we reshape our thoughts, our processes to make sure people understand that they're wanted, that they don't have to feel second because of what a law or something was passed down? But how do we now navigate, reshape our thoughts, our processes so that we are open to additional conversations? We're opening ourselves to those who who are already marginalized, who feel even more. And what do we do to begin to navigate to this pathway? So we're writing about it. We're talking about it. We have articles out that are coming out. We're doing the work to really reset and navigate this pathway.
Absolutely. And I'm just wondering, too, just as a quick follow-up, do you think that actually this will really increase enrollment potentially at institutions like Morehouse School of Medicine? Because in some cases, maybe students who might have wanted to go to a predominantly white college or university and may not have gotten accepted for whatever the reasons might be, I've now decided I'm going to go to Morehouse because by default, it's an HBCU. They're not looking at my race, quite honestly, at this point, because by default, I am a minority or a person of color. And I think that there's a greater opportunity, a chance for me to be accepted there than maybe another predominantly white institution. Just quick thoughts on that.
Yeah, no. In fact, there are so many hashtags now, like hashtag HBCU, hashtag we want you, hashtag this is where you belong. Of course, where enrollment sometimes is down in some HBCUs, we're going to see an uptick in that because there's a new market, there's a new campaign that honestly that can be now open to say, why would you want to go to a place where people don't really want you? The whole thing about the SAT scores. Now we know GRE, even GMAT, those things, they don't really always tell you how well a person is going to do.
Exactly.
They don't correlate the best. John Hopkins really started many years ago where they were not taking GRE, GMAT, and things of that. Because what did it do? It separated. It had this whole separation because a person can perform well. I'm one of those people. I could make straight A's and B's, but come standardized test time, I'm freaking out. I'm falling out. It is hell for me.
Exactly. Well, let me stop you there and let Sweta jump in as well, too, because I really want to get her perspective, especially from a traditional institution like Kennesaw State. What are your thoughts on this, Sweta?
KSU, I've been at KSU for 15 plus years. And over the past 15 years, it has grown tremendously. So it's now at 45,000 students. And a bunch of our students actually are first generation students. So diversity, equity, and inclusion is almost built into the fabric of KSU.
Right.
Because of the student population that we serve. These are not, we didn't start out as the traditional R1 institutions. KSU started out as a community college, then went through R3, and now it's an R2. And our student population has been growing, but it still tends to have a high percentage of people who are first generation students, a lot of them coming from multiple diverse backgrounds, and not just racial, but also ethnic, and representing many global boundaries. And in my program in particular, I guess because I was very intentional when I was putting the structure of the program, because we are working on creating that workforce for the next century, and it is health tech. So I was very intentional in ensuring that the program is going to have the diversity, and it's going to have gender equity, and it's going to have both racial and ethnic representation across the globe. So we have been I guess because we were so intentional about it, the program does represent almost an equity. So for the past few years, we have almost had equal representation of men and women in a health tech program, very STEM focused. We have representation from people across the globe, and we have a diversity in the classroom. And Chris, you have seen the diversity of students.
Yes.
I'm very proud of how it has shaped up. And we are going to continue to push the boundaries on that. And honestly, KSU in general will continue to be that diverse school, will continue to be almost like the mecca of students who are going to come from diverse socioeconomic, racial background. We'll continue to push the agenda forward on that.
That's great. And I can personally say I've gone to graduations both at Morehouse School of Medicine's program under Dr. Howard, as well as programs at KSU as well. And honestly, if I took a picture of either one and gave them to you, couldn't tell which one was which.
Yes.
That's just how diverse both of the programs were in terms of people of color, gender, backgrounds, et cetera. It's definitely a testament to both institutions on your commitment to diversity at so many different levels. But I don't want to leave Geoffrey out either, too. So I want to jump into a little bit about how this ruling is impacting technology companies and how technology companies are grappling with this evolving landscape of diversity and inclusion and hiring practices. We do know that a ruling by the Supreme Court is obviously going to trickle down into business and other areas as well, too. So just brace yourselves. Those lawsuits are on the way, and they're not already making their way through the courts now. And we'll be having this discussion in other verticals as well, too. So that being said, I know that global institutions like Geoffrey's has to deal with a wide variety of people, backgrounds, cultures, races, religions, just because they're a global entity. And I'm curious, Geoffrey, from your perspective, what is your organization, or just in general, your perspective on, are you guys discussing this topic? How are you thinking about navigating it? What do you put? And I know you are an advocate through and through around initiatives as well, too. Just want to get your thoughts and insights on this as well.
I think what's interesting, and to Dr. Howard's point, this has been a long struggle and a long process. And really, this is just another wrinkle in the process. The reality of it is, I think those companies who truly authentically and intentionally believe in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and will strongly believe that you've got to have a very intentional focus to recruit in these types of communities that have frankly been ignored for far too long, are going to continue to do it and are not going to shy away, even if their governor of a specific state tells them you can't. And I think we've seen that. And I think we need to be encouraged by that. I think the companies who are at a point in time where they're questioning or they're choosing to take the title Chief Diversity Officer out of someone's role, which we are seeing in some companies, shows you they were never truly intentionally invested in the work.
Exactly.
And so I think at a time where we're still dealing with significant recruitment, significant retention challenges, this is not a time to take your foot off the gas when it comes to diverse pathways. Because the reality of it is we're dealing with 5 different generations in the workplace, and the future generations want a diverse workplace. In fact, we are seeing that people are saying only want to work for a diverse workplace. And I think those companies that truly have created that are going to continue to be the ones that have higher profitability, higher performance, and better retention. No question. And so I think ultimately leaders, shareholders, board members, et cetera, need to sit down and really reflect on, do they want to be a workplace of the future? Or do they want to sit in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s and be a workplace of the past? That's ultimately what they get to choose. And my advice to leaders is, I don't care who your governor is. If they're telling you how to do your recruitment and your retention, they have no place to do that. And in fact, I would argue that they're going against the cornerstone of that party's foundation. And so instead of taking our foot off the gas, this is the time where we should be plowing forward aggressively to ensure that we continue to not only do, as Dr. Howard and Dr. Sneha referenced, increase our pipeline of diverse candidates and programs, make sure we're giving them an opportunity. And the final point I would just make is, for all organizations, there has to be a stronger focus on getting individuals of color and individuals of different cultural and ethnic backgrounds into leadership. It is far too long that we still don't have enough of that role. And additionally, at the board and shareholder level too. It's crazy to me that in 2023, we still have very small numbers in all aspects and every single industry. And I don't think we can rest at any time in this work. We've got to continue to march, and we've got to continue to organize, and we've got to continue to educate. And frankly, I'm encouraged to see academic institutions get creative about this, because the reality of it is that if you really study the decision of the Supreme Court, and don't get me started on my opinions of the Supreme Court, because it is the least amount that Americans have confidence in, that generally you still have opportunities to have a diverse student body.
Exactly.
And let's remind ourselves that one of the justices that voted on this decision should not have voted because he had a clear conflict of interest. And so let's be honest about the facts on it too.
Absolutely. I want to double down on that a little bit as well, since you brought it up. The Supreme Court's ruling on affirmative action definitely has the potential to reshape the composition of many industries, and healthcare is not excluded from that in terms of workforce development. The possibilities of changes in admission and hiring practices, organizations are going to have to your point, Geoffrey, reassess their recruitment strategies to ensure that a diverse range of candidates are in place. They should actively seek individuals from these underrepresented communities, create scholarships and mentoring programs, and really find ways to foster partnerships with academic institutions as well. And I'm just curious, from each of you, and any one of you can chime in on this, what are some of your thoughts around strategies that these organizations, including your own, can start to focus on to ensure that we have a robust pool and pipeline of professionals, but not only just a pool, but a willingness for organizations to want to recruit and hire these individuals? Because I would venture to guess there are a lot of really smart, bright people of backgrounds, of different backgrounds, color, religion, ethnicity, et cetera, that are looking for jobs right now, but are struggling probably because of some of the ruling from the Supreme Court, but just in general because of general biases that might exist or lack thereof of sponsorship or resources. I'll stop there and let you guys weigh in on this and give me your thought on that topic.
I'll take the first stab at it. So I always feel like it's one thing to build a pool that's diverse, but it's another thing to make it inclusive, right, to actually give them the opportunities to succeed. And we have taken almost a three-pronged approach. So, of course, you give them those opportunities by bringing in a diverse pool that you're going to eventually train and put them back into the workforce. But the second thing that supports their growth and supports their professional depth so that they're actually ready to hit the ground running is to make sure that you bring them in front of people. Chris, you came to one of our recent events. Yes. And we have a very strong, so I've worked very closely to ensure that we have a strong support with the industry, with our board of advisors, with our industry partners, because it's a pipeline, right? I'm not keeping those people for myself. I want them to be trained and then be able to contribute to the industry's growth. So it's important to put them in front of the very people that they will be working for. They're not hesitant to talk to them because they've seen them for the 2 years that they've been with us more often than not. We buy memberships for professional organizations. Obviously, HIMSS is one of them. We bring them in front of the health tech ecosystem by taking them to large conferences such as Health Connect South, to American Medical Informatics Association, and the others. We bring them in front of Technology Association of Georgia, especially in front of the digital health ecosystem, because all of those things build those nerves and build that professional dev muscles so that when you're in front of them, it's second nature. You're not going to be hesitating to say what you have to say. You're not going to rethink what you have to say. Sure. And you're not going to feel like you don't belong. Absolutely. And the third, equally important, is to actually give them the sponsorship that they need with financial assistance. And we have been very fortunate to have industry support. So we actually provide financial assistance and also give them research opportunities. So in general, we would provide like a dozen or more, almost 24 sponsored research opportunities to the incoming grad students. Then we provide fellowships to our faculty and to our grad students so that they can couple and work together on multiple innovations that are happening in that space. Because digital health tech, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface.
Exactly.
So there's so much that needs to be done, and then exposing them to that whole new space of what innovation is. And again, you cannot innovate till you understand what the gaps are and what are the limitations of a certain community versus others. So I feel like it's not, for us, for me, it has been a three-pronged approach. And so far it has worked, but it has worked because there are so many stakeholders that are part of it. So it's not been a one-person show for sure.
Wonderful. Angelita or Geoffrey?
Yeah. I think intentionality, what Sweta said is absolutely right, but intentionality. And so what that means for us, for me, is that, and Christopher, you being on the advisory board, know how important having an advisory board to academic programs align so that we hear the voice of what's happening in industry. But for me, there are a number of organizations that will contact and ask, do you have anyone? Can you put this job out there? And so my answer to them, my response is, yes, if you will come and do two things, have a webinar, have a Zoom meeting with our students, show them how to best represent their resume. So don't just ask so that you can check off the diversity box and say, I sent out something to Morehouse School of Medicine, but you know what it takes for people to get into your organization. You know how the resume should look or should be structured. We can teach resume writing. We can teach professional skills and things of that nature, but it's good. I try to make sure that we have people from industry, especially those who are hiring, to have some sit down talks with our students so that they can align themselves a little bit better or position themselves a little bit better to be successful in the application pool. And then beyond that, it's a lot of networking. It's a lot of networking with the industry, making sure they hear us and they see our students and that we're putting our students in front of them. There have been in biotech much more scholarship offerings, but we are increasing some of those things, funding for health tech, health informatics, that's starting to grow. But again, that program is still very new and there are opportunities for us to engage and grow, but you have to be intentional, I think, with academia and industry and really
partnership.
It should work. Yeah, it should be this partnership because you're getting what you want people, what you're doing in the industry. You're teaching, you should be a part of the teaching, not necessarily team, but the instructional, what is being taught to make sure that they are ready for industry when they leave from us.
Absolutely. I'm curious, Geoffrey, from your standpoint, the power of sponsorship or mentorship and how that plays into what happens within your organization and recruiting those next generation of professionals.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a huge emphasis. And certainly, I think the key is, as both have referenced, you've got to have intentionality around it. And then when they get in, they've got to experience what you've told them it's going to be like, or they're going to leave, especially the next generation. And so I think that's a critical piece. I think organizations, especially today, particularly organizations who truly care about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, are certainly interested in having active intentional outreach to really the historically groups that just have not been generally at the table. And I think what's important in that process is getting aligned with people to help open those doors through trusted messengers, and then make sure that for organizations that embed mentorship, which is a great model, you've got to make sure you have the right mentors. You have mentors who really don't know how to mentor. And that's where a lot of organizations fall short, is we have people who may look like a good mentor, but really just are not good at it. And so make sure there's training, make sure there's a development on that end too. And then the other thing I think that's really important is make sure that you've actually built into your organization on performance and on pay, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. You can't say you care about it if it's not built into your performance appraisal process.
Right.
And your promotions process and all other aspects of policies and procedures. That's really the next generation of this work that's really critical. And why I say that is that the next generations, the younger generations, they're going to choose whether to stay with you or not on those types of things because they're savvy and they know it. And to Dr. Howard's earlier point, they will organize, and which is great to see. And I think you're seeing in some of the union strikes, people also talk about some of these issues, that they want to have a stronger sense of belonging.
Exactly.
And the one thing I'll just say again is I'm really bothered when I see organizations take out the titles of these critical roles or reduce them just because they're afraid of the political impact. Look, if people like former Congressman John Lewis were afraid of these types of things, think about the fact that we wouldn't be where we are, despite we're not as far as we should be. And so we've got to make additional incremental steps there too.
No, absolutely. And I should have asked this question at the very beginning. And we're actually getting pretty near to the end of this episode. So obviously, I've got to have all of you back and we can continue the conversation. But just a fundamental question as you're sitting around the boardroom or talking to your colleagues or just having a general conversation around the kitchen table, the fundamental question that should be asked is, why is diversity important? Why do we need it? Why can't we have a society and a community that doesn't focus on it as a value? And I know that's a pretty loaded question. So throw it out there, see who wants to catch it and run with that question.
So I will take a stab at it and I will give you an academic answer first. So theoretically, and there has been multiple research that has been published on that, the diversity in a team actually germinates innovation. Because if you don't see everyone's perspective, who is actually going to be the population and the audience that's going to be consuming an innovation and artifact, you're not going to be able to build in innovation to serve that ecosystem. So there has been published work that will tell you that it's not just the right thing to do, it's actually beneficial. There's an IBM article that's been published on that. It's beneficial and it increases revenue and retention of organizations that have a diverse pool. There goes your published academic answers. But also from a personal standpoint, if it wasn't any importance to diversity, I will not be here talking to you. I would not have had the opportunity to connect with you.
Exactly.
And honestly, and I wouldn't be arrogant about thinking that no one else would have done what I did, but maybe no one else would have had the intentionality built into it, like the way I thought of it. Because like I said, I came to US after my high school. What did I know? But I felt the support of the community that elevated me and gave me opportunities to be. It was my dean back then I don't know what she saw in me, but she gave me the opportunity to represent us at the Atlanta Chamber of Commerce at the Biosciences Leadership Council, which is where I met a bunch of people in the C-suite who eventually became best friends who came out to support the program as it was getting launched. It's important to bring that diversity into the pool because they will have a bigger drive to give back because they have been on the receiving end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great response. Angelita or Geoffrey, any comments?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Sweta said. I know that you all can't see us on this podcast, but it's diversity here. And we could go another hour or two just talking about issues and having answers or trying to solve some of our greatest problems. But we could write an article. We could probably sit and pen an article together academically, socially, professionally, personally, that would, I'm certain, really influence or impact change. But I will piggyback on Sweta's comment. Even she talked about coming here after high school, but even in my role as a Black female in a leadership role at a medical school, so many obstacles came through because if you think about it, I'm certain people should not have thought, okay, I should be Black female doing this type of work. And the support of colleagues, the support of mentors, the support of people who understood that there was value in the work that I did and do. And again, do I think I'm not replaceable? Of course, someone can come and take my job. But I don't believe the way that I've set up these programs, these online programs, with the heart and the passion and the intentionality. I use that word and I don't use it loosely because I really mean it. I don't think it would have happened this way. I don't think that every course that you see or touch that is in our online program, you can trace some activity, even if it's a reading activity or a writing activity, you can trace it to advancing health equity. I just don't think that the level of input or thought put would have been there. So given the opportunity as a female, Black female, to do this work, I'm very grateful and I'm thankful that, someone took a chance on me to do this level of work.
Wonderful.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is, at the core, right, everyone strives and desires to have community. And so I regularly say to people, why should we be choosing who doesn't have community and who has community? And that to me at the core is a lot of what diversity represents. There is nobody in this world that should be denied the opportunity to have community, be valued, appreciated, and respected for who they are. And I think leaders and organizations that choose to do that are going to continue to be unprofitable, unsuccessful. And even maybe they may have success in wealth, but they're not going to have success when they go to bed at night because they frankly don't have integrity and they don't love people. And for me, it really comes down to that. When I look at when my family left a country that caused a lot of havoc and a lot of tragedy for people for no reason, they didn't come to a country that was to be so divisive. They came to a country that was to be united. And so I think we as a nation, and certainly we as a world, should come back to that level that everyone should have access to community. And when we do, we thrive and we succeed. And I think we've seen this. Organizations that truly lean into this work with intentionality will not just continue to succeed, but will clearly make a difference in the lives of people who need it. And that would be the challenge I would encourage leaders to really think about is, do you want to make it for people or do you want to break it?
Exactly.
And that to me is how I see it.
Oh, that's a drop the mic.
I was going to say, I'm going to leave it at that right there. I'm leaving it at that right now. I don't think anything else needs to be said other than as we close out this episode of Straight Outta Health IT, I think we can all agree that the Supreme Court's ruling on affirmative action will undoubtedly have some impact on the talent pool and technology. While the ruling may bring some changes and challenges, it also presents an amazing opportunity for industry to embrace the diversity and shape a brighter future. As we navigate the evolving landscape of healthcare technology, it's crucial to recognize the value diversity brings to the table. By fostering an inclusive environment where individuals from diverse backgrounds can thrive, we can tap into that wealth of unique perspectives, experience, and talent. Thank you, guest, for taking time out of your very busy schedules and your late evening to record this episode of Straight Outta Health IT that clearly shows me your commitment to your journey in this initiative around diversity and inclusion. I got to have all of you back on the program again to continue this dialogue. And I also want to thank the listeners who are tuning in and listening to this program. I think absolutely this is one of the best ones we've done. So I need you guys to share it and make it go viral and have these types of crucial conversations with your colleagues as well, too. I know I have the opportunity traveling all over the country and having cocktails at a bar or a restaurant or whatever. And sometimes I get into these conversations with individuals who are curious about my perspective. And the first thing I say to them is thank you. Thank you for having courage to want to have this conversation. But now we may walk away to agree to disagree, but that's the only way we can start to evolve as humanity, is that we have to have these discussions, understand each other's perspective on it, and hopefully come somewhere in the middle where we all agree that there's much that brings us together that's alike about us than what's different. And so let's start focusing on the things that bring community and value the things that make us different as well, too. So with that, thank you, everyone. Have a great day. God bless, and see you on the next episode of Straight Outta Health IT.
Thank you so much for listening to Straight Outta Health IT. We hope you enjoyed today's guest. For more unfiltered dialogue of healthcare leaders and influencers, be sure to tune in next week. For the show notes, transcripts, and resources, please visit Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite streaming platform. We invite you to give us feedback by reaching out to Christopher Cunny on LinkedIn, just searching for Straight Outta Health IT, and you'll find us. We are constantly having live discussions about diverse topics in the industry.